we're going to do two quick mini lessons here in our decimals, fractions, and percents unit. This is in the back half of your rates and ratios note packet that we've been using. If you don't have a copy of the note packet, you'll just want to write this out on your own sheet of paper. But basically, we're going to do a quick little introduction on going back and forth between different forms of a number: decimal form, fraction form, and percent form. So we're going to start with the decimals and fractions lesson. So find that page in your notes, and then we're going to go ahead and get started from there. All right, so first we're going to focus on writing decimals as fractions. That's the first part in your note packet, or in this section of notes, and we're going to fill in this blank right here. The best way to turn a decimal into a fraction is to say it in word form, okay? By saying it in word form, kind of saying its name, and not like 0.6, but like 6/10, because the 6 is in the tenths place, it tells us how to write it. So if you don't have this, jot down this little table, our place value table, and we're going to practice here. So we kind of put our number there. You'll notice that the 6 is in the tenths place. So I say it as 6/10, meaning 6/10. Then, like any other fraction, don't forget to simplify. 6 and 10 can each be divided by 2, and I get 3/5. Okay. So let's try our next one. So I'm going to kind of drag my next one up here. So we have 375 in the, doesn't quite line up here. It goes to the third decimal place, so it's going to be in the thousands. So we would say it 375 thousandths. So again, saying it in words helps us write it. 375 over 1,000. Now, bigger numbers going to take a little bit more work to simplify, but I know that 375 and 1,000 can each be divided by 25. So let's start with that. Divided by 25, and I get 15. 1,000 divided by 25 is 40. Okay, I can simplify a little farther. Divide by 5, and I would get 3/8. 375 over 1,000 simplifies to be 3/8. But the key is just by saying it in word form. So let's try one more. All right. So when we get to the decimal point, we're going to use the word and. 4 and 28 hundredths, because it goes to the second decimal place. So 4 and 28 hundredths. Notice how the whole number stayed the whole number the whole time. All I did was just write the decimal part as a fraction. 28 in the hundredth spot, so 28 over 100. In this case, they can each be divided by 4. So I get 4. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 100 divided by 4 is 25. 4 and 7/25. Okay. All right. So that's going from decimals to fractions. What if we want to go the other way? So going from fractions to decimals, there's actually two methods. So first one is write an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. So I'm looking at my note packet right here, make sure I get it set up correctly. So you got to write that part in, the part I underlined in blue. And the key is aim for a 10 or 100. 1,000 works every once in a while, but usually I want to go to a 10 or 100. So let's try it. Can I go from a 4 to a 100? Well, yeah, I can multiply times 25. So do the same thing up top and get 75 over 100. Okay, and then again, say it in words, 75 hundredths. That means 75 that ends in the hundredths place, the second decimal place. So by writing it out of 100, we can say it in words, just like we did when it was in decimal form, and it helps me write it out. Here, I want to go from a 20 to a 100. Well, to go from 20 to 100, I multiply times 5. So I do the same thing up top, and I get 35 hundredths. And again, say it in words, 35 hundredths. So 35 that ends in the hundredth spot. The 35 is the number, the decimal. The hundredths is where it ends. It ends in the hundredth spot. Now, sorry, my screen keeps sliding on me. Not every number is going to be able to turn into 100 or 1,000 very easily. So we always have our backup. And for this method, I'm actually going to let you use a calculator. So the backup method is divide numerator by denominator. Think of that fraction bar as meaning divide. Just do 7 divided by 8 in your calculator, and we get 0.875. So the quickest and easiest when you have a calculator handy is simply to divide numerator divided by denominator. 7 divided by 8. Okay? The number on top, the numerator goes first, so denominator goes second. All right, so that was a real quick lesson on going from decimals and fractions. Now we're going to add in percents. So flip to the next page in your note packet. This one's a nice quick one. And we're going to focus on going from percents to fractions first. All right, so percents to fractions. So here's the two things we want to add into our notes. A percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. I always think of it as it means out of 100. Okay, so that goes in that first line. And then our second line, to write a percent as a fraction, write it over 100 and simplify. That's it. So 75% means 75 out of 100. And then we always look to see if we can simplify. In this case, we can divide by 25. 75 divided by 25 is 3. 100 divided by 25 is 4. 38%. Percent means out of 100. So that percent sign is kind of like your 100, your fraction part. 38 over 100, well, those can each be divided by 2. And we get 19 over 50. Okay, I know the simplifying part can be difficult sometimes, so don't stress too much about that. The fact that you know it goes out of 100 is the bigger part. So 55%, 55 over 100. Notice, as soon as I put it over 100, I don't need that percent sign anymore, because that's what the percent means, is out of 100. Well, then I divide by 5, because 55 and 100 can be divided by 5, and I get 11 over 20. So that's how I go from percents to fractions. Last part is now I want to go backwards. Can I go from fractions to percents? So to write a percent fraction as a percent, find an equivalent fraction with the denominator of 100. Okay, so just like we thought, percent means out of 100. So we rewrite it so it's out of 100. To go from 20 to 100, I would multiply times 5. So I do the same thing up top. 3 times 5 is 15. 15 over 100 is 15%. Remember, our goal is to get it over 100 because then that's already as a percent. To go from 5 to 100, I would multiply times 20. So I'm going to do the same thing up top. 2 times 20 is 40. 40 out of 100 is 40%. Now, the last one is a little bit tricky. 8 doesn't turn into a 100 very nicely. Okay, so every once in a while, we got to be a little tricky with it. So notice my note. Sometimes see if you can simplify your fraction first and then turn it into a 100. So 6 and 8 can each be divided by 2, and I get 3/4. Now a 4 can turn into 100. I just multiply times 25. So I do the same thing up top. 3 times 25 is 75. 75 over 100 is just 75%. So to go from a percent to a fraction, we write it over 100 and simplify. To go backwards from a fraction back to a percent, we write it over 100, and that turns it into our percent. All right, I know I went through that a lot and quickly. Don't worry, we'll be practicing it some more tomorrow, but that gives you a good start.